Welcome to Battlefield 6 Season 1. Today, I want to start you guys off on the right foot by giving you the absolute best settings that you should be using right now here in Season 1 of Battlefield 6. Before we get any further, do me a solid and click that thumbs up button. It helps the video out quite a bit, and it helps other people discover the actual best settings in the game. With all that being said, man, let's get straight into these settings. Now we're gonna be starting off in accessibility, which is a mix of a little bit of everything. So for the subtitles, I like to have these off. I just think it's extra words and just things on my screen that aren't too important, at least in my opinion. I like to have it off. Here's a little bit of a better breakdown of the subtitles. So I have the text very small, and then obviously friendly subtitles like of your teammates or your squad and things like that. I obviously have that on, but instructions, don't really care to have it on. I got the text small just so I could see outside of all that other nonsense in my opinion. So that's why it's like that. We have our graphics here. So for the color profiles, left mine default. Again, this is more of a personal preference thing. So if you want to mess with your colors, go right ahead. I think everything's fine how it is by default. Moving on to the brightness, 50, right down the middle, not too dark, not too light. I think it's completely fine. Camera effects though, this is incredibly important in making your game just look incredibly crisp and smooth. So the world and weapon motion blur, I have at 0. Why in the world do you want blur on your screen? There ain't no reason for it. So just make sure that's zeroed out. And then the camera shape amount, I do have this at 50. So this is gonna obviously decrease the amount the camera shaking whenever you're moving around. It just, you know, makes it a little bit more smooth in my opinion. So that's why it's at 50. The rest of this, I pretty much just left alone. Reduced sprint camera bobbing. I guess I can have that on. So whenever I'm like sprinting, I'm not moving left, you know, hitting one of these things, but if you want more realistic, obviously keep it off, but having it on is probably the better option there. Oh, next we have our controls. This looks like it's really scary, a lot going on here, but the only important setting here in my personal opinion is this one right here, interact and reload. So for the battle royale, you're going to want to do prioritize interact because this will allow you to loot a lot when But if you're in like multiplayer, say, I think the best thing to do might be like reload to tap and interact to hold, just to make it a little bit easier on you. But when it comes to the battle royale, prioritize interact 100%. It just makes looting significantly easier. The rest of this I left alone. Isn't that the biggest deal in my opinion. Coming back down, we have some of our other controller settings. Again, controller vibration, do yourselves a favor and turn this off. There ain't no reason for your controller to be shaking when you're in the middle of a gunfight. Some people like it. I'm not a big fan. I've always had it off. Intensity 0. Get out of my screen. I don't want none of that whatsoever. Adaptive triggers, weapon fire, I have this just left alone, just 100%. The chat, have that off there. I don't like the chat on my screen personally. I think it's just it's just too big. It's too much. Tutorials have off. Again, extra nonsense on my screen in my personal opinion. We got the hints here. Again, left default, didn't really mess with it. But that's going to wrap up the accessibility settings. Let's move on to the gameplay settings. And these are also mostly left alone. I think we're going to get into the real settings once we get into the controller, but it's still important to go over here that a lot of this is kind of just, again, defaulted out. You don't really need to mess with a lot of the stuff. It's just such minuscule things. We obviously have our infantry aim sensitivity, which is incredibly important. Mine's a 48. I think anything below this just felt a little too slow, and anything above this a little too high for me, and I think that's what's the perfect sensitivity. So 48 might not be it for you, but this is a great starting ground. But again, it's not too fast, it's not too slow, so that's why it's perfect to me. The rest of this here is left alone. Again, there's so many settings in this game they don't need to be messed with. Interact and reload behavior, again, prioritize interact. You could find it right here as well, which is great. Vehicles, I don't spend a lot of time in vehicles, so again, left default, don't mess with it whatsoever. Here we go. We got some important stuff here. Infantry aim input curve. I have mine on Battlefield 4. This one just felt the best for the aim input curve, and then same goes for the zoom aim input curve as well. Both Battlefield 4, they just felt the absolute best for me. You may feel you know, indifferent about it, but I highly recommend doing the Battlefield 4. It just felt the absolute strongest and just the most natural to me personally. Again, vehicle stuff, I don't really mess with too often. Infantry aim assist zoom snap, it is 30. And then I also have my vehicle aim input curve, another aiming one here at standard. Again, if I was to actually use vehicles, I'd probably just have it all aligned to be Battlefield 4. But that's gonna wrap up the gameplay. Again, nothing too crazy here. What we're gonna get into next though is controller settings. And this is incredibly important, especially when it comes to winning our gunfights. Now, before we get into our controller settings, it is incredibly important to know what controller I'm personally using so the settings actually make sense. I'm currently rocking a PlayStation 5 DualSense Edge controller. I've been using this for about 6 months now. It's about $200. You can get it at your local Targets and Walmart. But what makes this $200, one of which is going to be the paddles on the back here. So essentially what I have these mapped to, I have this one as my X button and this one as my circle. So what those do, X, I could jump, mantle, things like that. And the right stick, I could crouch, prone, and slide. And what makes that so important is I can now keep my thumbs on the analog sticks while I do those various movements back here, rather than having to take my thumb off this analog stick and go press those individual buttons. It just makes things a lot easier for me personally. Another cool feature they got here are these levers. And essentially what that does is make my triggers a significantly more digital tap, which is really, really nice. So they're a lot more responsive. You can even map it on the PlayStation application as well, whether you're on PC or the actual console itself. Very, very nice. I also have this purple stick here, which raises the analog stick and makes it just a lot easier to aim and whatnot. So this is a controller I'm using. I've had it for 6 months. Very durable. Absolutely love it. It's my favorite PlayStation controller I could possibly use right now. So you see the controller I'm rocking with. Now the settings are going to make so much more sense. So for the controller settings here, again, that is my aiming sensitivity out of 48. It just works the best for me. Field of view is 115. I think 120 is a little too much for me personally, so I like to rock at 115. If this is still too high for you, I highly recommend like a 105, 110. That might be perfect for many of you. The uniform infantry aiming I do have on. The zoom sensitivity coefficient is incredibly important. This setting right here might be the most important controller setting, because prior to actually having this on, I did have this uniform infantry aiming off. So that kind of hides that coefficient setting. So make sure this is actually on. And once this is on, it's going to make the controller feel so much snappier, a lot more smooth, because prior to having uniform infantry aiming on, it just felt way too clunky. My aiming, I'd move my analog stick, it moves too much or it moves too little. It didn't feel smooth until turning this on and then messing with that zoom sensitivity coefficient. And 138 for me felt so good. So me giving you this information is gonna greatly help you out in whether multiplayer or battle royale. Again, this in my opinion helped me the absolute most after spending so much time in my controller settings, because the game didn't feel right to me until messing with this. And then the infantry aim assist zoom snap is a 30 still. Infantry aim input curve, once again, you could see it right here, is the Battlefield 4. I have my stick input acceleration preset to just standard. I didn't really need to mess with anything else. You obviously have a couple of other great options here like Battlefield 4, 3, and BC. I kept it on standard. It just felt the best to me personally. Aiming left and right acceleration is 50. You don't want to move to the left too slow or too quick and then move to the right the opposite. You know, that just doesn't make sense whatsoever. But again, if you take anything away from this video, uniform infantry aiming is on, and zoom sensitivity coefficient 138. You might have to tweak yours a little bit because it's something, personal preference, but 138 feels incredible for me personally. Moving down, I do play a lot of Call of Duty. So my sprint button, I have it just up on a left analog stick. So I don't have to press on my left analog stick, wear and tear on the controller. I simply go up and I start running. It just makes things significantly easier for me personally. And same goes for the sliding. I just want it to be just single tap circle. So whenever I'm running and I tap circle, I'm gonna slide. Or if I'm standing still and I tap circle, I'm gonna crouch or prone, whatever that may be. But these two settings just made the movement so much better for me personally. You could obviously mess with that for some of these other things like steady scope or the zooming, things like that if you want. The infantry zoom aim sensitivity is also incredibly important. This is a separate sensitivity to when you're actually ADSing. So I had to tweak with this quite a bit as well, but 77 just feels the best. Anything under just felt way too slow, and anything over was just a little bit too quick. So you got to find that perfect middle ground. And for me personally, I think 77 just works absolutely beautifully. After the 3x zoom, I like to have it a lot higher because it's a lot more zoomed in. I kind of want to drag that scope around just a little bit more. So that's why it's like that. And then after like 4.5, I'm like, all right, we can just keep it natural. We don't gotta, we don't gotta mess with it anymore after that. Some of the other settings here, I honestly left default. I'm gonna be honest. You saw these in the accessibility category there, but those were left alone. Infantry motion sensor aim button and I have this completely disabled. This will mess with your aim if you accidentally do have that on, and the flick look was also left alone. So it's gonna wrap it up for the controller settings. Again, such important settings, my personal opinion, when it comes to Battlefield 6. Next, we have our graphic settings. Now, I am on a PlayStation 5 Pro, so my graphic settings don't look insanely crazy compared to those of you who are on a PC, but it's pretty straightforward. A lot of this you already saw, like the world brightness. I have the sharpness at 55 just to add a little bit of, you know, sharpness to it. Looks great. Performance, I just have it on auto balance. What's the other option? Oh my God, I did not mean to do that. I just want to see what the other option was. Okay, it's just on auto. I don't know why anything changed when I just simply changed it. Okay, whatever. It didn't change nothing. Field of view, you already saw that. Weapon field of view, I have it on wide, so my weapon just appears smaller on screen. It doesn't take off as much space. I can see where enemies are at, which I like a lot. And film grain, I have that off. The vignette, please turn this off. It makes your game look significantly darker. I didn't see this setting until after I made my settings video like about a month ago now, so incredibly important to have off because your game's gonna look so much darker and you're gonna have your brightness cracked on. Trust me. Vignette, please turn this off. You don't need that on. HUD, I think this is all important information, so obviously I have that all on. And chat visibility, I hid this, bro. Top left, that is a big ass chat box I have top left. I don't really care what people are saying, so I turned it off. It just clears out so much space on my screen, which I like a lot. HUD icons, again, if you want to see that, I'll just show it to you. I didn't mess with any of this. Again, there's so many settings in this game that are just incredibly unnecessary, at least in my opinion, that don't make the world of a difference. Jot it down if you want, but again, I left all that stuff default. I don't think it's that important when it comes to that. We'll go to the other one as well that it showed. Advanced HUD settings. My horizontal HUD padding I have at 25. I think I made this a little bit smaller just to clear up space on my screen. Minimap, I do have at large. I like to look at my minimap just to kind of see where I'm at or what's going on, if I can see any red dots. So that's important to me. That's why it's on large. But other than that, the rest of this pretty much just left alone. We got the big map opacity, just 85. Again, a lot of just standard settings here. The most important we kind of already went over, but it's still important to go over because I know people go pretty in depth about these, but I think that's pretty much it. You got the HUD icons. I think we already went over that, right? Yeah, we went over all that, but I think that's gonna wrap it up for these settings. I'm trying to make sure to go. Yeah, that's gonna wrap it up for the graphics setting. Again, very straightforward. There's a lot of in-depth stuff here, but a lot of the key stuff we already went over. Moving on to our audio settings, I think the audio is like pretty much flawless in this game, so there wasn't too much I had to mess with. Master volume, I have it at 60. For me personally, anything over is just a little bit too loud. The music's nice. I like to have it down because again, I want to hear the in-game things rather than the actual music. But other than that, I recommend doing your sound system on headphones and then doing the audio mix on war tapes. This really enhances the audio in my personal opinion. But besides this right here, war tapes and headphones, you know, I don't think you need to do too much after that, but I'll quickly go over it. If you want to see anything here, you got it. Enabled radio music. I look, you want that off. I don't really care for any of that either, but that's gonna wrap it up for the audio settings. Very straightforward. Those two options I showed you with war tapes and headphones, that is like the main takeaways when it comes to audio. And to wrap things up, we finally have our system settings, which in my opinion, like you kind of already saw half the stuff here. We have another way to access the minimap settings here. We also have, you know, that radio music that I just turned off. But no, that's gonna wrap up today's video, man. I hope you guys enjoyed. Again, a lot of the stuff I left alone. The main important things are in those controller settings. I gave you the main key features. It's just such a hassle to really go in depth and look at these settings, but a lot of it, again, you don't need to mess with. If you guys have any comments, questions, or concerns over anything your boy went over, please let me know. For those of you who made it to the end of the video, before you head out, click that thumbs up button and just know your boy spent so many hours of in-game time and here in the settings, just kind of trying to absolutely perfect it. I live by these. These work really, really well for me. I hope they work just as well for you guys. So that's gonna wrap it up. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you in the next one. You guys all stay safe. Have a great day and I'm out. Doses.